Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
Gregorio de Miguel Casado, speaking about bridging formal methods in computer science for scientific computing and cognitive science modeling tasks.
Take breath. Thanks. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me, and particularly Benedict Law, which is not here, I guess, for encouraging me in giving this talk. I mean, I have been working some years in scientific computing, and I have developed some, I guess, useful tools and bridges, which are now I'm using in what I call, or it's called cognitive science. I had the opportunity now to stop and put out of my head all that things that I think that are meaningful for this cognitive science approach. I have used the idea of how does the world compute, the same as the computability in Europe, more or less the topic of this year. This is some phrase that I already used in my PhD. And then I will move to the idea of how do we compute. And I will talk about the dynamical systems and formal methods. I would like to start by giving you some milestones which I consider interesting in the field of scientific computing. We have Babylonian tables in which the Babylonians perform multiplications. They already know how to multiply. Then we have some interesting device, which is the abacus, which is thought to be Chinese, but I have read a paper recently in which they say that it is a Babylonian invention also. Then we have what's called Napier bones, slide root, Pascaline, and Martin Davies wrote from Leibniz to Turing, all that mathematicians working in that idea, which finally ended in the idea of computer. I mean, from Turing and von Neumann. Our computers nowadays are based on that ideas. And from that, the development of the digital computers has grown in a very, very spread sense. I mean, I would like to remark one interesting, from my point of view, contribution from Thomas Gardner in 1955, which is concerned about the first decision about the inner arithmetic which a digital computer would use. They were just deciding about decimal arithmetic or binary arithmetic. And he said that that was not an important decision, because the most important thing is that a digital computer would have a finite arithmetic. Okay? Then we have some floating point standard in 1985, and then since that we haven't had nothing new. I mean, we have used this standard for floating point, and in nowadays computers we have the same floating point unit. In this regard, of course, we have high performance computing. We have big clusters of computers doing scientific computing, but not in the basic data types. They are using another high-level programs, Mathematica, MATLAB, and so on. We are also using GPU computing. That's the graphic cards for doing some calculations. Cell processors, for example, from the PlayStation. There are some guys doing scientific computing with that. And then in 2008, we have a revision of that standard. But that revision of the standard includes a new decimal floating point approach, but is basically an extension of what we had before. We also have now IBM Z9 and some coprocessor FPGAs which implement that. But as I will tell you later, This is something which doesn't provide a wide, perspective to the world of scientific computing. So I used this slide in my PhD presentation some years ago, how the world computes. I'm mostly focused on physical models, and the process that I understand, which is the process that I think is involved in scientific computing, is that we want to validate some model, and then we measure things in the physical world, then we put them on a computer, and then we act in the physical world. Or maybe we just check if our model is valid or not. Then here we have the idea of finiteness of computers, which somehow puts some barriers of what we can do with nowadays digital computers. Okay? These are the issues that I identify in scientific computing right now, the scenario. We have no exact arithmetic standard. I was invited to a seminar in Dagstoel in 2008 in which they discussed about the new exact real or rational arithmetic standard, what it could be. They said things about interval arithmetic. Maybe we will see something about that in the future. Some mathematicians show that it was meaningless, because if we compute using intervals, then we can have some problems whenever we have a zero in between our bounds in an interval. What do we obtain from a real number expressed as an interval if we divide it by an interval which contains zero? So it's an improper interval, for example. And what they told is that this kind of arithmetic would not succeed. More things. We are spending a lot of resources in high performance computing. There's some trend now which is called green computing. Yes, not to waste too much energy in computing, I mean. But at the same time, we are feeding the idea of high performance computing, and we spend a lot of electricity. And from my point of view, there's some displacement there from the idea of use muscle versus use brain. I mean, because we are not we are using when we are using a high performance computer, then we are using a multiprocessor, in which in each processor what we have is a IEEE 754 compliant floating point unit, and that's it. We have nothing new in hardware. So therefore, what I think is that there's the leadership of the hardware and software companies is also it's also gathered by the financial firms. I mean, all the results that we have right now about decimal floating point are concerned with financial rounding, and you can even see that in the new IEEE 754 standard. Furthermore, we already know that the funding for basic research, at least in Spain, or what we have realized in Europe, is being cut down. I mean, this seems that the guys from technology are the things that they do seem much more interesting than what we do in theoretical computer science, for example. And all in all, I think that we are living in an overloaded information society, collapsed by the need-based economy. So financial firms and hardware companies are somehow financing the support to artificial needs which are created. I mean, not scientific real problems. So something about my background, just to motivate what I am going to tell you after this. I did my PhD in a computer architecture department, and I came soon interested in formal methods. I visited Professor Klaus Weyeraudt and learned a lot about computable analysis, and also I visited Tucker, Professor John Tucker, and learned some interesting talk about algebraic specification of processors, and I did some technical. I obtained some technical results, which somehow provided me with a good insight of technology in scientific computing. But my main aim is in this field is about calculation reliability. What I have found in computable analysis is that we can get some interesting formal method just to build a coherent bridge from discrete to continuous computing. Under this idea, what I have done is to think about accuracy in a different way. If I need some accuracy at the result, I put the necessary precision in the operands that I use at all levels. Okay, and I have also thought about real-time capabilities, respect the left-to-right Turing machine dynamics for the arithmetics that I have implemented, and always think about feasible software and hardware prototypes. This way, I extended a fractional positional notation from Klaus Weyeraudt just to cope with periodic rational numbers because I needed them for my arithmetic unit, and design an arithmetic unit which increases the spatial complexity so that to cope with the idea of computing always from left to right, that is obtaining the most significant digit of each time of operation, and 1 digit output per cycle, as it is understood in bitwise complexity. I had presented my work in CI 2000C. This was more or less the roadmap of my PhD, just building that processor and bridging that formal methods. I developed all the theoretical stuff for computing with this fractional positional notation, always left to right, considering all the rational numbers. It has some interesting stuff because if you use a canonical representation, you can get the most of your memory, indeed, because you can represent more rational numbers using fractional positional notation that if you use an algebraic one, for example. And I have applied it to modeling and simulation of the dynamical systems, and now in phylogenetic analysis, inferring very, very huge trees, in which you have to perform the calculation of evolutionary, what's called distance. And if you have plenty of nodes, you have to perform a lot of calculations. And now I'm thinking about some extensions of this, from binary to decimal arithmetic also, and also in extension of these operations. This is what I have done in the last 6-7 years about scientific computing, and now I have moved to cognitive science, but with all this knowledge that I have produced, understood before. I would like also to give you some milestones that I consider interesting in my research. First of all, at the beginnings of the artificial intelligence, it was clear that Alan Turing made a nice contribution, because the idea of the computer as a support for artificial intelligence was a very ambitious thing. And I have also put some dots here until this interesting, this is from an interview that somebody did to Minsky in 2003. And he's well known as one of the founders of artificial intelligence and thinks that nothing interesting has been done since the foundational of the years of artificial intelligence.
I think interesting is done since he has done it.
Yeah. So from that disappointment, then we have had some evolution in ideas of artificial intelligence, behaviorism, cognitivism, connectionism, embodiment. Do you know what embodiment is? It's the new idea about what's artificial intelligence. It's something which is, I'm sure that you know that the cognitivism idea is something very easy to understand because we can conceive all the cognitive processes as processes, but embodiment means that there are some cognitive processes which are not mental or directly, which are not conceived as a process, which are embodied in our nervous system and in our cognitive system. Then we move to the idea of how do we compute, and we have the same stuff. We want to model things. We have the same scenario from the point of view that if we want to validate something, then we have to put it in a computer, for example, and then we have the same problems like in scientific computing. I also did some stuff in cognitive science. As a matter of fact, it was one of my main interests in research, but I couldn't succeed in doing that. And now I'm more focused on that because I have been working in some interesting projects with Elvira Mayordomo, Balcázar, and so on during the last years. And also I have joined a network, Retecog, which is the Spanish version of Eucognition. What I have done, and this is a joint work with colleague Manuel González Bedia, is we are tackling the following objectives. We are interested in that chimera of intelligence emergency. And we are trying to bridge some ideas from cognitivism to embodiment, together with the idea of bridge some artificial intelligence ideas to machine learning ideas. This has some philosophical motivations underlying there, and we have done it, our first step in this field, around the idea of the Turing test. Which formalization do we use here? The idea of dynamical systems and distributed artificial intelligence, together with computable analysis. We have sent this paper to CIE 2012 about revamping the Turing test by computer interaction coupling, and hopefully soon we will have some feedback. Just something that most of you will know deeply. The idea of what Turing said about the imitation game. We have one interrogator here, and we have two humans, one man and woman, both pretending to be woman. One of them pretends to be woman. And we change, this is the idea that the connection in between the interrogator and the participants is done by a terminal, which is one of the keystones of the approach. And then somehow, in a moment, we change this participant here for a computer. And we have to decide if C has to decide, interrogator, who is the man pretending to be a woman, or if this is a computer, I guess. Then the motivational idea for us is that this setup for the Turing test, which has been very criticized, very analyzed. There's plenty of literature around that. It's based on a communication on using teletypes, and this limits the possibility of understanding the idea of intelligence emergence. I mean, this puts a big bound. Then our idea relies on the following things. We model social interaction, that is conversation, using the idea of coupling in dynamical systems. We have embedded the idea of learning in a function what we call kernel. Just to put it aside of the main idea. I mean, learning and acting is something embodied in the idea of kernel. And then we have developed one philosophical idea from José Antonio Marina, which is a Spanish philosopher, around the viewpoint of what is an intelligent project. And he says that reality acquires new possibilities when embedded in an intelligent project. As a project is above all an idea and unreality. And we manage reality by means of unreality. I mean, this is, I think, an interesting philosophical fact. I have used it as a motivational fact to build what I am going to show you. We have divided the objective and subjective parts of what we think it's important in our model. One thing is the observable interaction, and the other one is the learning process. I mean, we can observe something from a process, but the learning process is something subjective, okay? We have built a model based on the same stuff that I have been using for other dynamical systems. That is, to use computable analysis as a bridge from the discrete and continuous world, okay? And we have built some idea about the suitability of our intelligent project. If we find coupling, then we have emergency of intelligence. If not, we have maybe some computer pretending to be a woman, for example, in our Turing test. We have built our model using the following assumptions: finiteness, because we have bounded physical capabilities, input, calculation, output. We have also focused on real-time interaction, as well as a finite direction of our project. Performance as the internal success measure of the strategy. The training we have encapsulated in the idea of kernel. We are working on that, just bridging some ideas from machine learning to parameterized complexity. Minimality. We have also found our approach in the biological inspired functionality, that is the idea of neuron as computational primitive, and so on. And therefore, we can characterize the idea of coupling, that is the success of our agent, which implements some behavior, as a projection of a distant goal in a given time. And therefore, if we can reach the goal just before we end the project time, then we say that we have a coupling. Semi-coupling, we don't know if there's something intelligent on the other side, and then we don't know if we will reach the goal or not. I mean, because the time ends. And uncoupling is that our system, the function completely diverges. Okay. As I told you, the subjective part is based on the idea of kernels. I won't enter in this part because it should be another work, ongoing work. And we have provided the agent with behavior as just in the sense of an algorithm. He gets some state from the world, he evaluates and updates his own state and provides an output. Simple stuff. As a conclusion, just to finish because I'm running out of time, we think, from our humble point of view, that the Turing test in its initial setup was something that had to do with humanity. If we can grasp some idea of what we have in front is a human or not, okay? Not about the intelligence, the emergency of intelligence, because we are bounded by the communication mechanism that we have, okay? And we have revamped this idea with modeling social interaction with the idea of coupling. And using this idea, we will work on it just to analyze other interesting things that we can get from dynamical systems, such as the concept of metastability, stability, and so on, just to give an insight of other cognitive processes. Future work, bridge cognitivism and embodiment, as I told you, develop some ideas about the kernel. The underlying idea is the search of invariants, not only in data, as is done in learning processes, but also in dynamical processes themselves. And also develop the idea of modulus of computability. But what we have done is to embed more information, packing them together with the rational step functions, which form part of the representation of an LP function in computable analysis. And that's it. I have bought this interesting, I guess, idea from Sir Isaac Newton about building bridges. Thank you.
So we have maybe a couple of minutes for one motion.
Why don't start with something very simplistic and expect a computer to do well on an IQ test? Right? This is the way we usually measure intelligence.
Yeah.
So how well do computers do on IQ tests?
It should be interesting. I mean, but you have to provide them with an objective. I mean, with a project. I think that
just give them the standard IQ test. The Stanford Binet IQ test. Off the web, you can find an IQ test and give it. Can you write a program?
Yeah.
It will do at least, let's say, 100. An IQ test.
But imagine that I think that they have to. I think that they need the same information, and somehow both of them need to understand a common objective. I mean, from that interaction. Intelligence by itself, I think that it's a very difficult thing to distill, because we have an intelligent way of viewing things. I mean, we can focus on something. For example, if you are thinking about that cognitive processes, intelligence is not something that clear. I mean, intelligence by itself, I don't know how can we build that IQ test.
Maybe I want to make a comment. It is, of course, a little bit unconventional to claim that the Turing test, as taught in the original paper, was meant to define humanity rather than intelligence, because the assumption on the teletext was precisely meant, the bounding of communication means was precisely meant to avoid any interpretational aspect. So like voices and tones and that kind of stuff. So
yes, but this is a position paper. I mean, it's not, and we have grabbed some idea from dynamical systems just to put on top of the table something which has been missing. But there are also some philosophers we think that the Turing test is not for intelligence; it's for humanity. So we have also based our research on that. But of course, I just could give you some tips about what we are thinking about. Maybe it's not 30 minutes was not enough. If you want some ideas, and of course, if you have some formal methods that I can use to search invariant things in data and in processes, I will be glad to hear you.
Okay, I think we should stop the session here. Thanks.
Thank you.